My name is Suzanne Kamfar. I am a licensed professional counselor, part of Eddings Counseling Group, and I am a mind-body trauma specialist, and I work with individuals and couples. So the topic of our presentation tonight, as you can see, food, a gateway to mental health. As you know, food is something that we either are thinking about, are planning it for, are shopping for, or in some way or other way, at least interacting with any sort of preparation of it at least 3 times a day. I forgot to tell you about our free monthly webinar, so let me get that out of the way. This webinar, this presentation is part of our free monthly webinar series that we have it every Thursday, every second Thursday of the month. For that, you have to sign up in advance, and as you experience today, you'll have the link to the webinar a few days in advance. For the sake of us knowing how we can improve our presentations and our offerings for the public, you are going to receive a questionnaire, a feedback questionnaire at the end of this webinar, and it's going to be in the chat. So if you could kindly fill those up, because it gives us a lot of information about what is mostly interested, what are you guys mostly interested in knowing more about. Going back to our topic, as I mentioned, the objectives for tonight is going to be about understanding how food choices impact our lives. As I mentioned before, every single day, at least 3 times a day, if we were not counting the snacks, we're either preparing, engaging in eating, or thinking about our shopping lists. So because of that, we need to understand how food truly impacts our bodies and our minds. And for the sake of this presentation, it's mostly about how food is impacting our mental well-being and mental health. We want to explore the connection between what types of food should we eat and what types of food should we avoid in order to bring more balance to our lives. And the other objective is to identify foods that enhance mood specifically, and allows us to develop a higher level of tolerance, especially with the lives that we are leading today, which is mostly filled with a lot of anxiety and stress. For the sake of our conversation, we have to define what food means to us. If we were in a interactive conversation, I would probably ask you guys out to tell me, what does food mean to you? What does mental health mean to you? But since we are in the format of a webinar, I just put up the definitions for you guys to see based on how World Health Organization, WHO, defines food. It's any substance or mixture of substances that provide nutrients and energy for human beings. Basically, we eat food to, number 1, live, number 2, to grow. And on top of that, it has psychological effects. It gives us satiation, it gives us pleasure, the texture of the food, the taste of the food, the smell of the food, all of them are gratifying and satisfying to our senses. What does mental health mean as defined by WHO? It's a state of well-being that allows people to cope with life stressors, to work productively and contribute to their community. Basically, mental health is where there is a state of balance between our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual states. So for the sake of the conversation tonight, we are exploring the connection of food and how it influences and attributes to the state, to the well-being of the state of our mental health, which happens through gut-brain connection. This is what we're going to explore tonight, the dynamics, the connection and the interaction between our gut and our brain, which is a two-way communication system between the gastrointestinal tract and the central nervous system. Gastrointestinal tract is basically a very elongated lumen starting from our mouth, and it ends with our rectum. It's about 9 meters long or 30 feet. It has various chambers or divisions, that the parts that it has been divided. It has different functionality with different consistency, acidity, motility. Without getting into too much of a detail, there's a simplified description of what it is and what it does. So basically, it's a place that we takes on food and then moves it throughout this system. And at the end of it, we get a lot of nutrients for energy and growth. So the dynamic of the connection between gut and brain that researchers have been, it has been decades and decades that they are working on, and they have been a lot of recent exploration about what happens in the gut and how it communicates with the brain. Basically, it's a very complex system that happens through various ways. One is through the nervous system, and one is through the endocrine system, which means all the neurochemicals that gets released into to our bloodstream. But let me go back and kind of simplify it. So basically, at any given moment, there's a conversation happening between our brain or our nervous system, the central nervous system, and our gut. It's a two-way conversation. It's as if our guts and our brain are on walkie-talkies, or they are relating to each other or communicating to each other with their cell phones. They're texting back and forth. Their information being relayed from the gut to the brain, and at the same time, their information being relayed from the brain to the gut, which regulates a lot of different activities that simultaneously is taking place in both of these organs. And that happens through very complicated and complex systems. And why does it matter for us to know about them? I mean, I'm giving you a little bit of detail at the beginning of this conversation, so it will then, at the end, you will really understand when we put foot on that grocery store, when we are writing our grocery list, where we are opening our fridge to take out the ingredients, to put them together and make our dinner. What does it matter for us to be informed of this dialogue that is happening, this communication that never stops? Because literally we have the power to change that the information that is being relayed to the brain and back to our gut by making very simple, easy choices. And because of that, it's important for us to know a little bit of the dynamic, how the interaction works. So our brain, which is part of the central nervous system, has about 89 to 90 million cells, if I'm not mistaken. So imagine the amount of a number of the cells in our brain that is in charge of taking care of the rest of the body. In the past, that's what researchers believed, that the central location for controlling the rest of the body actually is stationed in the brain. Nowadays, we have about 100 million, it's 100 million neurons, meaning nerve cells that are located all around our gastrointestinal system. So if you look at the proportionality, researchers have come to this understanding that our gut, so when I'm referring to gut, it's not only about your stomach or your intestines. It's basically, for the sake of this conversation and for the sake of the conversation that we are referring to, the connection between the brain and gut, when I'm referring to gut, it means anywhere from the beginning to the end of the digestive system. And that basically is the home of about 100 million neurons. So can you imagine if all of these neurons at any given moment are taking information from the environment, which is the inside and the outside of our gastrointestinal system, and they are relaying and they're sending out this information to the brain, and this happens constantly. So this is one way of this communication tower, basically, that is happening at any given moment. So part of the gut-brain connection that I was referring to is exactly the part of all of these neurons, 100 millions of them, like cables going out to your brain and directing messages from your gut area or from your digestive tract and taking it to the brain. And they are in charge of controlling and releasing a lot of hormones in the brain. They communicate the dynamics that are happening inside of your gut, inside the lumen. They are talking about, disregard this very complicated picture. All I want you to pay attention to is this giant green blob in the middle of the screen that is surrounded by all these little cells, which these are all the cells and the linings of your digestive tract inside that lumen. And in between all of these cells that are responsible for taking on the nutrients and putting it in your bloodstream, these giant green blobs, which are the neurons, are responsible of taking all the information and then relaying it to your brain through various pathways. But if I want to simply explain what they do, they are sensitive to specific nutrients that they come in contact with through the foods we eat. They are sensitive to sugars. They're sensitive to amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. They're sensitive to fatty acids, which are the building blocks of fat. They're sensitive to all the other microorganisms in our GI tract or in our gut, which I'll be talking very soon about them. So they detect all of these different molecules and these ingredients and the chemistry around them. They send a lot of messages to the brain. So basically everything we eat, from the fruit that we grab, from the potato chips that we grab, from the chocolate chip cookie that we grab, all of them, they are basically making difference and changes in all these cells, neural cells in our intestinal tract. And they make a difference of how that information is related to the brain. These neurons are called neuropods. They have been discovered since about 10 years ago. They're the outmost newer part of our understanding of how the dynamic between the conversation between the brain and gut works. What are another part of what the nervous system portion of our intestinal tract is responsible for making a neurochemical called serotonin that is basically the happy chemical. It's designed to make us happy, give us a sense of calm and peace, makes us feel hopeful, makes us feel open and ready to experiences, and 90% of that is actually made in the gut, which then gets through our bloodstream, and through the bloodstream goes to our brain, and then does its job in our brain, and that's how it influences us our brain as well. The other part of how our brain and our guts are talking back and forth is through the gut microbiome. So gut microbiome consists of all the elements of microorganisms that live inside of our digestive tract, inside our gut, again, starting from the mouth, from the end to finish line. These consist of bacteria, viruses, fungi, their metabolites, their genes. So imagine the galaxies outside in the space. Imagine the number of stars that are all in these galaxies. Imagine all the life under the water in the oceans. Imagine all the species of animals on Earth. Like, I want you to literally think about the numbers of the species or the stars or all the all the life in every format that is under the water. Each one of these basically consists of infinite number of microorganisms, mammals, stars. Now I want to bring your attention to another ecosystem to the scale of galaxies, like on a galactical scale that actually lives inside of us, which has been the focus of the research of a lot of scientists for the past 30 years. So microbiome is nothing that people started looking at in the last 30 years. It has been under the radar of researchers dating back to 1900s, but it didn't get that much of a popularity. People were not paying attention to them until recently. So there's a world inside of our digestive tract, again, consisting of microbes, fungi, viruses, their genes, their genomes, their metabolites, which is one of the most influential parts of maintaining our health, both our physical health, our mental health, our longevity, how well we go through stressful events of our lives, how well do we deal with our interpersonal interactions. You might be very curious and very confused of how come this small world inside, well, small, when I say small, because it takes up a very small space in our bodies, but this vast, magnificent world of microorganisms, how could they affect and influence all of these? So this is a exaggerated picture I wanted you to have. I wanted you to be able to imagine this is part of inside of the lumen of your gastrointestinal tract or your gut. And about 39 to 100 trillion cells of these microorganisms live there. At this exact moment, as we're talking, you have had your dinner, or we might go and have dinner after this. I haven't had mine, I'll have it after. Imagine there are about 30 to 100 trillion cells inside our digestive tract waiting for that meal to go in. And as many of the variety of these microorganisms, some of the meals that we are taking in, all the nutrients, the ingredients are wonderful for these teeny tiny microorganisms. And some of the ingredients that we eat are harmful. So based on what we put in there, the outcome of how they're going to interact with each other, with those micronutrients, and within our bodies, inside our cells, it changes how they either do their job or they don't do their job, how they can be helpful or harmful. So again, imagine if we say it's about, why do I put 40 to 100? Because it's based on, this is an estimation. Nobody has actually gone there and counted all of that. So this is an estimation based on different research that researchers has done. But imagine if I go for the lower end, if I say there's about 40 trillion cells. Again, if this was an interactive, I would have asked you to tell me how many zeros are in front of that 40. So how many zeros makes 40 become 40 trillion? It's about 12. So you have to put 40 and put 12 zeros in front of it. And that's the amount. That's the least. That's the lowest amount of the number of microorganisms that are currently inside of us. Okay, let's see if I can get this ready. We'll watch a short video together.
So everything about us is all about this bacteria inside of us. So we have billions and billions of good and bad bacteria that live in our gut and our stomach. And those guts, when they are happy, we are happy.
In fact, almost all of our body's supply of serotonin is manufactured by our gut bacteria. And serotonin is one of the body's natural chemicals that control our mood. And that brings us back to those nerve pathways.
We're just starting to see that 90% of the feel-good chemicals that we produce in our body are actually produced in our gut and then sent kind of up to the brain.
When it comes to what we put in our gut, you probably won't be surprised to hear that there's one kind of food that isn't so great for our mood, stuff that's ultra-processed.
Those are foods that have been changed so dramatically that it no longer really resembles the food that it once was. And what we're finding in the research is that the higher your consumption of ultra-processed foods, the more likely you are to experience negative mental health and a decrease in mood.
Okay, that makes sense. And so it's just kind of the way our bodies have evolved, I guess, because we wouldn't have had like ultra-processed foods back when we were cave people.
Exactly. And there are only a few tribes left in the world, the Hadza and the Maasai tribes in Africa, who have never been exposed to ultra-processed foods. And a lot of scientists and researchers are doing research on them, and their gut bacteria is so much more evolved. So the more fruits, veg, nuts, seeds, raw, whole foods that you eat, the better your mood and the happier. So everything about us is all about this.
Okay. Okay, so as you saw, the number of these microorganisms and what they do and how they influence our body is based on what they can actually provide for us in our bodies. This is a simplified, if you look at the slide, this is a simplified version of what these microorganisms do for us. They help with digestion because some of the carbohydrates and the dietary fibers that we eat, our body cannot break them down. So they help with breaking down these nutrients for our body to be able to digest and to take it in and use it as fuel. They help with the production of some of the vitamins in our body. They have a tremendous amount of influence on our immune system. Number one, based on their bioavailability of the nutrients that these microbiomes help those nutrients become available, they affect the immune system. And another way that they tremendously affect the immune system is that if there is the right number and the right species of the bacteria growing inside our bodies, the integrity of the wall of our digestive tract stays healthy. And because of that, no particle, no food, no bacteria can escape that lumen. Because of that, so let me put it this way. When the microbiome is not either not the right species, or the number is not correct, or they're not providing what they're supposed to be providing because the outnumbering of the bad bacteria, which grows more, there is some damage that happens at the level of the lumen. There are some spaces that open up, and because of that, bacteria, nutrients, ingredients, they escape the digestive tract, they get secreted into our bloodstream, and our immune system picks it up. And since they treat it as a foreign body, and they start responding against it, and that's how you see some of those autoimmune diseases. And so if the microbiome is not at the exact range of normal that is accepted by the body, we are going to see a lot of health issues from asthma to autoimmune disorders, to obesity, and to weight gain, uncontrolled weight gain, and all of that. Another one of the functions of the microbiome is brain health. It helps produce neurochemicals, mostly serotonin, which is 90% made and produced in the gut. And then it affects, again, through the brain-gut connection, it affects the production of other neurochemicals in the brain, and all of these influence the way we feel. It influences our mood. It influences how we interact or react when we are faced with stressful situations. It affects our anxiety. It affects how we respond to stressors related to interpersonal relationships, to environmental stressors, all of that. Another function of the microbiome is to maintaining the blood sugar levels. It controls them. If we have bad bacteria growing part of this microbiome, it elevates the sugar that is the blood sugar, and then it affects how body responds to that blood sugar, which is We have insulin spikes when the blood sugar goes up. We have insulin spikes. And why does insulin spikes matter? Because every time we have an insulin spike, it's a precursor for inflammation. And then it increases inflammation all throughout the body. Brain gets affected as well. So you can see on many different levels, from an immune system level, brain health level, blood sugar level, all of that influences our brain one way or another. And then weight control and heart health is part of their functionality of our microbiome. Okay. So now that we have talked about what microbiome is, why does it matter? What does it do for us? How much it really influences and impacts our health from various level, multi-organ level. It matters to know what influence our microbiomes, because as I mentioned, there are about 39 to 100 trillion organisms that are living inside our guts. Not all of them are good. We have good bacteria, we have bad bacteria. They're based on what foods we take, the ingredients that we have, based on how much stress we have in our life. It really influences the numbers of these, or the health of this microbiome. When there's no balance between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, we have the imbalance of it, which is called dysbiosis. And dysbiosis really influences our health. And that's where the influences how healthy we are, influences how susceptible we are to sickness and illness. It influences the longevity of us. We age faster, we get sick faster, we respond to stresses of life more. So it's a big influence of how we carry ourselves overall. So it really matters what we do with our microbiome and how we take care of the health and the integrity of our microbiome. And that is all in the food we eat. So these teeny tiny organisms and microorganisms, they are feeding from what we put in our body. And what they really like are the ingredients that are mostly found in nature. Our microbiome do not respond to ultra-processed food. Ultra-processed food is the food that you see in the grocery aisles. If you go grocery shopping, if you enter the grocery store, there are different aisles, at least 20 or 30. Everything on your left-hand side and everything on your right-hand side, you'll find ingredients that are basically offered in their most simple form that they could be found in nature. From the fresh produce to the dairy aisle to the meat department. These are, I don't know if you have noticed, but these are all at the surrounding of the grocery store. Everything in between, all those aisles in between, and specifically when you get to the middle of the aisles, it's all processed food, from the chocolate and candy aisle to the cereal aisle to the boxed dinners that you find on all aisles and shelves. There's a classification called NOVA classification. You can Google it up. It's very interesting because NOVA classification tells you exactly, based on NOVA classification, we have 4 classes of foods. Number 1 being the least, this is the most natural one that you can find in nature, like milk, fresh produce, meats. They have not been touched. They have not been, nothing has been done to them. The second level of NOVA classification is where it has been minimally been in an industrial like factory, like oils. Like when you find coconut in nature, it looks like round, it's hard. But when we go and buy coconut oil, coconut oil has been, gone to a factory, and it has some processes have been taken place for us to have coconut oil bottled in a bottle. So that's second class of NOVA, and then goes to the third and fourth is the ultra processed food, that basically all the ingredients have been changed so many times chemically, that there have added preservatives, added different ingredients to make them basically maintain their form on the shelves without refrigeration or without freezer. And that's class 4, and those are ultra processed foods. Our microbiome hates processed food. The good bacteria either stops growing or literally loses its potency. The bad bacteria grows. So it really matters when we are doing our grocery shopping to pay attention to what really feeds our microbiome. Feeding our microbiome, basically, you will feed our health in various ways: mental, physical, longevity-wise, all of that. So one of the ingredients that our microbiomes really love are antioxidants and polyphenols. Polyphenols are compounds that are found in plants mostly. They are responsible for the coloring of all the fresh produce you see, the colorful berries, the orange in our sweet potatoes and carrots, the greens in our greeny leaves. Those are all the polyphenols ingredients that give them all the beautiful colors that you see. Antioxidants are the components that fight oxidation, another process in our body that, is responsible for us getting sick and for us getting old, basically. So antioxidants and polyphenols really fight against those and are really, really good for our microbiomes. And if I want to give you some examples of antioxidants, is beta carotene, vitamin C, vitamin E. For beta carotene is basically everything that is orange. This is the easiest way to remember. You go to your produce aisle, pick up your carrots and your apricots and your sweet potatoes. And then again, not all of them are orange because broccoli has a lot of that. For vitamin C, there are your lemons, your tomatoes, broccoli, strawberries. And for vitamin E, it's mostly in your oils and seeds and nuts. Omega-3 fatty acids, I mentioned it here because remember the connection and the communication between the gut and the brain. Our brain is mostly made of fat material. Believe it or not, it's mostly fat. So that's the building blocks of our brain. And in order for our brains to stay healthy, to be alert, be sharp, to be able to stay away from foggy brain, stay away from dementia, from Alzheimer's disease, it is very important for us to provide those building blocks for our brain cells, which are fatty acids, and that comes through the omega-3 fatty acids. And we don't produce them in our body, and we have to get it from the food that we intake. They really help with our cognitive function and with our memory, with staying calm and collected through stressors and through trauma. And you can get your omega-3 fatty acids through nuts and seeds, a lot of fresh fish like mackerel. Yeah, it has to be like those fatty fish with a lot of, it's not don't go for fat-free or low fat. A lot of salmons, mackerels, sardines, They have a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, and I've mentioned tryptophan-rich foods. Tryptophan is an amino acid which is a building block for our protein. Proteins are necessary for the health of the overall our bodies. Basically, we have proteins in every organ. So the reason tryptophan is specifically related to brain health is extremely important is because tryptophan is one of the building blocks of serotonin, which is a neurochemical neurotransmitter. If you remember, I mentioned that 90% of the serotonin in the body, which is the happy chemical, it's basically produced in our gut. So the more tryptophan you provided for our microbiome, they will help. They will help for the serotonin to be built, which is going to affect our brain long term. So can you see if you follow the path, then we know how every ingredient that we put in your mouth, we consume, how it really affects our body. And again, this conversation, this talk is not about keeping any diet or following any diet. It's about becoming mindful of what we eat and how it impacts us on a cellular level. The researchers have found a connection between ultra-processed food, as I mentioned, and how it really affects our mood. Again, ultra-processed foods I mentioned is the foods that when you look at it, you cannot exactly know what are the, if you look at something and you don't know what's in there, you can guess. I mean, yes, we know what goes into a bagel or what it goes into a donut. We know the ingredients. But if somebody didn't know and they looked at it and they couldn't tell what is in that food, that's ultra processed. All your cookies and cakes and pastries, the breakfast cereals, all the beverages that have been sweetened, candy, chocolate, hot dog, pizza, fries, packaged foods, and soups. The list goes on and on. I just wanted you to have a visual understanding of what a processed food, ultra processed food looks like, and how it really influences the microbiome in our nervous system, how it affects the neuropods. Remember those green blobs, cells in our intestines? They are picking up, do you remember I said they are sensitive to some specific nutrients? Mostly researchers are focusing on the sensitivity of those neuropods on sugars, fatty acids, and amino acids, but they're mostly sensitive that nowadays they're looking into the sensitivity to sweets. They really are very sensitive to sugar. They detect sugar in our lumen. They start sending signals to the brain. And how it works is that the more they sense sugar, so the more we eat sugar, the more we eat all of these wonderfully pictured ingredients in this picture, which are, I mean, I love most of them, to be honest. The more we eat more of that, of our chocolate chip cookies and ice creams and donuts and you name it, those neuropods are picking up, they get triggered, they are sending signals to the brain, and they activate parts of our brain that says, yummy, yay, I love it, send more of these signals. So basically, then it triggers another part of your brain that is responsible for cravings. And then you start to crave more of these ingredients that will give you more sugar. So basically, you eat sugar, they get triggered, the brain gets triggered, the center of the brain that craves sugar gets triggered and says, give me more, please, give me more, please. And that's how we develop a sweet tooth. I mean, this is what I did. I wanted to try it out and see, because you hear about if you stay away or if you stay on something for 21 days, your body gets adjusted to it, gets modified, gets used to that. So I did try last year. I stayed away from sugar. Like I tried to eliminate sugar fully from my diet, from what foods I'm eating for about 21 days. And after 21 days, I was able to continue that. I became curious and I was not craving sugar as much as before, even though I have a very sweet tooth. And to my astonishment, I was able to continue a sugar-free, I don't want to say diet, but sugar-free program, food intake for about 10 months. I was not craving it. I was going out with friends. They were having all these different desserts and I never craved it. But I joined the clan after 10 months and then, but I still can eliminate my sugar intake whenever I want. So that's a part of our conversation because I really want us to have some time for questions. So quickly, now that we know the importance of what we put in our mouth and how this influences the dialogue that takes place between our gut and our brain and how our brain really responds to that in various ways, it's very important for us to, this is a reminder. Again, this is not a diet. This is not a format. This is not something you have to basically follow every one of these bullets. But it's good. It's a good reminder to know that we need to eat regular balanced meals. Include when you're creating that plate, you need to have your proteins. You have to have your whole grains, and most of it has to look beautifully colorful, and it has to incorporate a lot of your vegetables. Eat whole foods, which are minimally processed. We talked about it. Eat prebiotic-rich foods. Prebiotics are basically the foods that are microbiomes like, and I have talked about them. A lot of fresh vegetables, a lot of greeny leaves, colorful stuff. You have to incorporate rainbow diet, which again, it's when you look at your plate, it has to have a lot of different colors. You have to have diversity in the foods that you eat when you go to grocery shop for your grocery shopping. Try to become seasonal shoppers. So when you see all these ingredients that you don't see in different seasons, just go for those, grab those. Eat fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, and kombucha. And the reason for that, because these are all filled with a lot of bacteria, live bacteria that is wonderful for our microbiome. There are probiotics pills in the market as well. Basically, you're intaking live bacteria, but we can do it easily with a lot of more natural ingredients that are in the market. Limit taking your sugar and your artificial sweeteners. We talked about that. Incorporate healthy fats in your diet, like olive oils, avocado oils, nuts and seeds. Make meal prep your priority. Don't do it last minute. Take a lot of time. Do it over the weekend, because this is when you will not default from your plan. Eat mindfully. Be mindful of when you're eating emotionally, when you are not hungry and you're grabbing for something, either sweet or crunchy, because you are trying to satisfy either anxiety or depression. And then eat your meals, take time, to eat slowly, and stay away from all our basically technological advances as gadgets that we hold in our hands. And this is more about how mindful eating will help you. Eat slow, understand when you're hungry and you're not, and then listen to your physical hunger cues. So when you are satiated and when you're done, don't eat more. Basically, this whole conversation is about understanding and becoming informed and aware that we are what we put in our mouth, because it really influences how our body functions. It influences what messages are relayed to our brain. It influences how our immune system, how our heart, how our hormonal system, it really affects how different parts of our body are basically talking to each other and communicating. And at the end, it really influences how your brain maintains its health and how it maintains the integrity of how, as human beings, we want to feel in this life and interact. So, end of our conversation, basically, I wanted you to look at this and know that the power to choose to eat for well-being is actually at the end of your fork. So it's as difficult as it sounds, as complicated as it sounds, it's at the end of your fork. You put it in your plate, you look at the colors, so become curious, become adventurous, and interact with your food. This is about me. And as I mentioned, I am a licensed professional counselor, working with adults, individuals, and couples. And I will be more than happy to help you go through your curiosity about life. Again, this is something I'm passionate about, the human body and human mind. And it's all the curiosity of how we are living our lives, how we present ourselves, and how we see the life throughout the lenses that we have acquired throughout our life. And I'm here to basically walk the life, that curiosity. There's a questionnaire for our feedback in the chat. If you kindly fill that up, it will give us more information about how we can provide more helpful, meaningful webinars for the public. And I am ready to answer any questions. So I'm going to stop sharing. And okay. Okay, tips. There are tips on meal prep ideas. But I think I mainly, let me go through the rest of the questions. Okay, so mainly I think I went over a few of the ideas, but for meal prep, if you take, in the beginning, it's going to be very difficult, but if you take one weekend, sit down and write down about all the ingredients, you can get a lot of ideas from online. Just look at the pictures. Google healthy meal prep, look at the pictures. You don't even have to spend time going through every website, reading through different recipes. If you look at the pictures, you'll have an idea of what kind of ingredients should go into your shopping list. Take time, make the list, think about all the ingredients that we either talked about tonight, or you can look it up in different podcasts. It will be a little bit time consuming in the beginning, but if you have your list, you will be able to go based on that every week. And then if you think about all the recipes that will be beneficial for all the reasons that you're choosing those recipes, you'll make a list. So this is only over one weekend. Allocate one weekend to get your list, get your recipes, print it out, have a booklet in your kitchen. So that will give you an idea. So next time you go to do grocery shopping, your shopping is going to be faster. You will not just roam throughout all different aisles. And then follow one or two of people that you like on social media or online, and you'll have a lot of wonderful recipe ideas to that. That's actually what I do and I have been doing. And it's very helpful. Okay. My challenge, there are constraints. Cynthia is saying, my challenge is there are constraints with healthy eating, especially if you travel and trying to explore other countries' cuisine. Also, how do you prevent yourself from orthorexia? So you're right, you're absolutely right. And then Tiffany is saying, my challenge is deciding what to eat. So I did travel recently to Europe, and I was out of the country for about 3 weeks. And you're right, that's the challenge. You do the best. This is not, we're not trying to create perfection. As much as we can, you stay on track. You do what you can. There are going to be days that we cannot. Even staying in your hometown, there are days that your life will throw you stuff right and left. So you have to be considerate about the times that you cannot follow, but it doesn't matter, because the days and times and each meal that you can stay on track, you can stay true to providing yourself, allowing your body to take in all the good ingredients that your body needs and requires. That's one step getting closer to health. If we try, so I told you about my experience about staying away from sugar. That was not my first attempt. I had done that the year prior to that, tried to stay on a sugar-free, and I couldn't because of various reasons. So you become cognizant of the fact that this is a journey. This is not a destination. We're not trying to create something immediately, but we are trying to incorporate one teeny tiny change after each other. Again, these are building blocks towards health. And before you know it, you have created a lot of change. I would love to stay. Oh, one more. Are there any cookbooks you recommend? Not at the top of my mind. I should have because again, there's not one format, one specific diet, or one. If you allow yourself to have a lot of curiosity, that's when you start taking those steps. I personally don't follow any cookbooks, cannot think about it on top of my head. But what I would suggest, look through the Mediterranean diet. That is the most comprehensive type of diet that will provide you with the most ingredient-rich items that and a lot of good fats, a lot of antioxidants. So based on all and the tryptophan-rich items. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for tonight. I really appreciate you taking time from your busy weeknight. Again, if you would kindly just put your feedback in the question that is in the chat, will help us a lot. And with that, I say goodbye to all of you. Bye-bye.